Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at BT9, and BT9 offers us lots of new and powerful tools to build and iterate on some new and existing decks. And today's deck I'm going to be taking a look at is going to be a brand new iteration on the Shoutmon deck. So Shoutmon's been around since BT5, and it's mostly been trying to play around with the blitz mechanic, so we could try to take advantage of that in this type of environment to be able to build him into a more OTK-based deck, and to try to utilize some of the new tech and tools that he got on the way, because he is trying to play around with adding cards to his inheritable source to make him a decently effective Digimon for this type of environment. So with that said and done, let's just get into the deck profile, starting off with the Digitama. The Digitama slot can kind of be whatever you really feel like you want it to be. I'm going to be running 4 copies of Greymon as the only Digitama, just because we're not going to be raising a whole lot. We are going to be raising a little bit just to try to get some extra card draw with some of our cards and the Blitz ability, because Greymon has this nice ability where when attacking once per turn, if this Digimon has 6,000 or more DP, then we get to draw a card, acting as the deck's main draw engine. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Monodramon. So Monodramon is another flex spot. It could really be anything you want it to be, but I do value that tempo efficient rookie to just get some extra bodies onto the field when we can. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Agumon. So this is another flex spot for the deck, but I do like the starter deck 1 version of Agumon just because we don't have a whole lot of ways of decently DP boosting our Digimon, and this is just one of the best generically. You could run some of the other DP boosting Agumons, like from the Galantmon starter deck, but we're not necessarily always going to be attacking into the opponent to deal damage, so I want that flexibility and safety on just the generic DP boost to be able to do different things with our Digimon with. Next, I'm going to be playing 4 copies of Shoutmon. So this version of Shoutmon comes from BT5, and this is going to be the deck's dedicated digger. So it has the on-play ability where we get to reveal the top 5 cards of our deck, add 1 Digimon with Shoutmon in its name, and 1 card with Blitz from among them into our hand, and then the rest go to the bottom in any order. So this is just your stereotypical digger trying to find our main parts and pieces. Then on top of that, this is going to be acting as the primary DP booster for the deck, just because its inheritable ability states that during your turn, if this Digimon has Blitz, then it gets plus 2000 DP, so it's going to be making our higher end a little bit stronger. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Shoutmon. So this is the BT6 version of Shoutmon, and this is going to be another draw engine for the deck for us to use, just because, well, we're playing around with the Blitz mechanic. So what this card is doing is it has the inheritable ability of when attacking once per turn, if this Digimon has Blitz, then we get to draw 1 card. So we're trying to use this in combination with some of our early game Blitzes to be able to help us draw into our late game pieces, so that way we could try to have the deck be as consistent as we can possibly make it. Next, on to the level 4s, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Agunimon. So Agunimon is just that hybrid alternate win condition, just because if we have a tamer sitting on our field, we could use Agunimon to digivolve on top of it as if it was a level 3 Digimon, and then possibly swing for the game. So that's just the whole intended purpose on us running a hybrid, just because we want to sometimes have different ways of being able to finish the game. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of BetelGammamon. So BetelGammamon is going to be one of the best early game blitzers, just because it's a level 4 with 6000 DP with the Wind Digivolving ability of Blitz, so that way we could try to use him in combination with some of our other cards to help us draw extra cards with. So if we use him in combination with Greymon and we use it in combination with the BT6 Shoutmon, then we get to draw 2 cards when we attack with this card, which is pretty decent. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Greymon X Antibody. So Greymon X Antibody isn't necessarily 100% for our Shoutmon DX. It's more of a card that's just here to play along with our ZeigGreymon and our Omnimons. So what this card is doing is it could digivolve for 0 on top of a Greymon, but at worst, we could still digivolve him for 2 and utilize his ability because of our level 5s, because his inheritable ability states that during all turns, when this Digimon has Greymon or Omnimon in its name would be deleted or returned to the hand or deck by one of the opponent's card effects, then we get to trash it 2 Digimon of the same level in this Digimon's Digivolution source to prevent it from leaving play. So we could use him to just try to help protect our higher levels, which is all we need because having some protection is better than having no protection at all. And the Greymon I'm going to be using to try to pair up with him is going to be 4 copies of Greymon. So this is the starter deck 1 version of Greymon, and this just helps with our overall damage output just because it inheritably has the ability of Security Attack +1, so if we really needed to, we could even make our Greymon X Antibody extra aggressive, or we just can save this for our higher levels to be able to have some very powerful swings with. Next, on to the level 5s, I'm going to be running 4 copies of OmniShoutmon. So OmniShoutmon is just one of the best level 5s for the deck just because, well, we're already playing lots of Shoutmons, and we could use those Shoutmons to warp into OmniShoutmon. So he has the nice ability where you could Digivolve this card on top of a Shoutmon for 4 and ignore its Digivolution requirements. So skipping stages is pretty decent just because we could try to climb our stages a little bit more effectively with. Unfortunately, because this is an ability, we do have to have the Shoutmon on the field in order to be able to warp, but that's okay because we're still skipping some stages, even though we might be leaving our Digimon a little bit on the vulnerable side if we choose to use this ability, but it does help prevent bricking, so we could still at least make some plays versus no plays at all. Then, on top of that, what we're really trying to use this card for is its inheritable ability, where during your turn, if this Digimon has Blitz, then it gains Security Attack +1 for us to deal even more damage with. And then one of the brand new cards that we got in BT9 is going to be 4 copies of OmniShoutmon X Antibody. So OmniShoutmon X Antibody can Digivolve for 0 on top of it an OmniShoutmon, otherwise Digivolving it for 3 on top of a level 4 isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world, acting basically like an Asuramon at that point, just because it has the when Digivolving ability of Blitz, so again, we could try to utilize the Blitz ability to make this Digimon a really strong Digimon, and have some really efficient and powerful lines of play. Then, on top of that, what we're trying to gain out of the card, because we are already playing an OmniShoutmon, is his X Antibody-based ability, where during your turn, while this Digimon has OmniShoutmon or X Antibody in its Digivolution source, then this Digimon can also attack the opponent's unsuspended Digimon, adding some extra alternative forms of control into the deck, which is why I like the Agumon from the starter deck. So this is just a good card to try to punish some of the opponent's plays if they're not necessarily playing the most optimally, or at worst, we're just using this card as another Blitzer to be able to utilize our Blitz-based abilities. Next, on to our Megas, I'm going to be running 3 copies of ZeigGreymon. So ZeigGreymon, yes, is a Greymon for us to take advantage of with our Greymon X Antibody in case we need to just sit on this card and still have him be kind of threatening and imposing. He does have the when Digivolving ability of Blitz, so we still gain all of our Blitz-based abilities just for using this card still, and on top of that, he has a nice inheritable ability for our higher stages to use, where during your turn, when this Digimon attacks with Blitz, it can also attack the opponent's unsuspended Digimon, basically allowing us to have that alternative form of control to beat up the opponent's unsuspended Digimon, which, if they're leaving themselves vulnerable like that, should be a very powerful maneuver to put you in a very advantageous position. And then the last level 6 of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Shoutmon DX. So Shoutmon DX, we have a couple of different ways on how we could use him. We could Digivolve him for 4 on top of a level 5, or we could Digivolve him for 2 on top of a level 6. Then he himself also has the when Digivolving ability of Blitz to, again, take advantage of all of the Blitz-based synergies that we already have in the deck. And on top of that, he has a really decent when Digivolving ability, where we get to place 1 red Digimon card from our hand into this Digimon's Digivolution source. Then for each OmniShoutmon or ZeigGreymon in this Digimon's Digivolution source, we get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with 5000 DP or less. So just going into this card, we could probably swing into the opponent's security right away with, add to his inheritable sources to do various different things. Ideally, we want to try to add to his overall damage count, and be able to delete the opponent's Digimon either through attacking with them because of our inheritable ability, or delete them with his own DP deletion based effect. And then as far as level 7s go, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Omnimon. So this is the BT5 version of Omnimon, and this Omnimon is one of the best, if not the best Omnimon for this deck to use, just because it has the when Digivolving ability of Blitz himself, and he has a secondary when Digivolving ability to be able to unsuspend this Digimon, so that way we could swing with our Shoutmon DX, Digivolve him into Omnimon, unsuspend, and then swing with the Omnimon, and then he has some nice built-in protection himself, where during all turns, when this Digimon would be deleted or returned to the hand or deck by the opponent's card effects, then we get to trash a level 6 from this Digimon's Digivolution source to prevent him from leaving the field. So he has some pretty decent built-in protection himself on top of what our Greymon X Antibody is going to be doing. And then the last level 7 of the deck is going to be one copy of Omnimon X Antibody. So this deck is running a little bit of X Antibody support, so it only makes sense for us to want to use Omnimon X Antibody, especially in combination with Greymon X Antibody to give him some needed protection. So what this card is doing is we could Digivolve him for 3 on top of another Omnimon, which we're already running, or we could use him to just Digivolve for 6, which is a little bit expensive, but we do have the X Antibody option to kind of allow us to do that and have him basically have pseudo Blitz. And then on top of that, for utilizing this card, he has 2 really strong abilities. He has a nice when attacking ability where we get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with DP less than or equal to this Digimon's DP. So he'll be able to delete almost any Digimon that we want that's going to be sitting on the opponent's field, which is pretty good because removal is always good, even though we might not always get the when attacking ability because it might miss its timing in terms of how abilities trigger with our X Antibody option. Then the main ability that we actually want to gain out of this card outside of that removal ability is more so to try to stop some of the opponent's aggression, because during the opponent's turn, when your opponent's Digimon attacks, we get to trash 2 of this Digimon's Digivolution source to just end the attack. Yes, they still do get the when attacking abilities off, but the fact that they won't be able to deal damage to us or delete our Digimon through battle is still super important to try to keep our cards around as long as we possibly can, to be as threatening and imposing onto the opponent as we possibly can. Next, onto the options, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Red Memory Boost. So Red Memory Boost is another consistency tool for this deck to use, just because we get to reveal the top 4 cards, add 1 red Digimon from among them and place it into our hand, and then the rest go into the bottom of our deck, with this card going into the battle area for some added efficiency later on, because of its secondary main ability of delay to be able to gain 2 memory at a later turn, so that way we could try to make our plays as effective and efficient as we can possibly make them. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Gaia Force. So Gaia Force is just going to be the hard removal security threat option that we want to run, because it's still good, because its security ability activates its main, with its main ability allowing us to delete one of the opponent's Digimon outright to try to be able to deal with threats we might not be able to deal with otherwise. And then the last option of the deck is going to be 2 copies of X Antibody. So we're not 110% focused on X Antibody, but it's still a good card when it comes up, and you could still line it up for some decently powerful plays, just because its security ability can anti-tempo the opponent while adding this card into our hand. And then on top of that, it just allows us to be able to place a card underneath our Digimon as long as we have a Digimon in play, so that way we could use its inheritable abilities of during all turns. This card can't be trashed in the Digivolution source, so it's a source that they can't get rid of. And what we're really trying to take advantage of with this card is its when attacking inheritable ability, where this Digimon can Digivolve into a Digimon card with X Antibody in its traits from our hand by paying its Digivolution cost. So it allows us to swing and to be able to Digivolve mid-attack into our X-formed Digimon. And then the last card of the deck is going to be the only tamer of the deck, and that's going to be 2 copies of Tai Kamiya. So Tai Kamiya is a pretty important card for this deck, because not only is he going to be our memory fixing tamer, so that way if our memory is ever less than 3, he'll always hard set us to 3, so we could try to make our plays as efficient as we possibly can, but he's actually adding to the overall damage output of the deck, just because we could actually have a really large stack with our Shoutmon, and we could take advantage of his ability where during your turn, all of your red Digimon with 4 or more Digivolution sources gain security attack +1 for even more damage potential. And then we still have a whole bunch of different tech and tools for us to think about utilizing, all depending on how we want to play the deck and the types of cards we want to put inside of the deck. So if you want to lean the deck into a little bit more of a control-heavy or control-orientated style, then we actually could think about utilizing the Greymon line, just because the Greymon from the starter deck gains us a memory when we delete an opponent's Digimon, doesn't state by card effect or attacking into it, so if we want to double down on that more control style focus, then he's a good card to help us accomplish that goal, on top of the fact that we do have Greymon X Antibody, which could increase the range of our DP-based deletion abilities, so that makes our Shoutmon DX's when digivolving ability a little bit stronger as well. Then we do have the War Greymons that we could also utilize to some similar style of effects, on top of the fact that we have Greymon from the starter deck to give us Security Attack +1 for deleting the opponent's Digimon. Even though we might not have Piercing, Shoutmon still has that DP-based deletion ability. And then to round things off, we do have War Greymon X Antibody if we want to lean heavier into the X Antibody side with this evolution line as well, just because he can also help gain us some memory for the act of deleting the opponent's Digimon. Or if you just want to go into some more classic Greymon based stuff, then we do have some more Greymons that we could utilize. So we do have the BT1 Greymon for an extra 2000 DP generically, which is pretty decent just because Shoutmon doesn't have the best ways of being able to gain DP. And speaking of extra ways to gain DP, we also have the secret rare BT1 Metal Greymon as another way to be able to gain some extra DP as well. And if we wanted to, we could even think about utilizing Metal Greymon X Antibody as another way to be able to give Security Attack +1, just because his when digivolving ability is affecting the stack, not this individual card. So that way we could then digivolve with Blitz and pass that extra Security Attack on to whatever Digimon we're digivolving into. Or if you just want to run a generic Security Attack Plus, just to try to line the deck up to be a little bit more OTK focused, then you do have Voltramon as one of the best cards, similar to Starter Deck Greymon, to be able to gain Security Attack +1 generically. Then we do have a Delicate Plan as a really good option to utilize if you're leaning more heavier into an OTK focused deck, just because it'll make our swings into the opponent's security relatively safe, because we get to turn off the opponent's options when we're checking multiple securities. And then we do have some other really interesting cards that we could think about utilizing in the deck, like Rowdy Wrecker, to try to increase our inheritables and utilize some of our other cards alternatively, just because it has the main ability where we get place a level 4 or lower red Digimon from our hand onto the bottom of one of our Digimon's Digivolution sources, which is pretty good because we could utilize something like Greymon X Antibody's ability a little bit better, being able to put in inheritable sources. Then, if we do, we get to draw 2 cards, adding to the overall consistency of the deck, which is pretty decent. Or if you just want that draw 2, you could run something like a Fireball to just help with the overall card draw. Then, Red has a slew of different removal options that we could think about utilizing, all depending on the different types of tech and tools that you're going to be incorporating. Then we also have some various other options to help DP boost our Digimon and increase our overall damage output, like Lightning Joust. And if you don't have access to Tai, then you could try to use Hero as a really solid replacement to try to have some extra DP on top of having him be the memory fixing tamer for the deck. And then another really good tamer to think about utilizing is going to be Cool Boy, just because we still are running a couple of X Antibody based cards, so Cool Boy can help fish that out, and when we use our X Antibody based cards, then he'll help us gain some extra memory and draw some extra cards as well. But like I stated before, the rookie slots are also kind of flexible, so we do have lots of different rookies that we could think about utilizing, again, all trying to support whatever middle ends that you're trying to incorporate into the deck. But for the most part, this is just my interpretation on what I think a Shoutmon deck is going to look like, and I think that there's still lots of different ways to be able to tech the deck to be able to handle this type of environment, which is a more OTK-based environment. You could easily tech the deck to be a lot more OTK-based focused, just because of the adding inheritable abilities. Means we could stack multiple instances of stuff like Greymon OmniShoutmon and Voltramon to be able to easily gain extra security tac plus to be able to punch the opponent's security as hard as we possibly can, and if the opponent isn't able to respond, then we just win the game on the following turn because of that. So Shoutmon isn't a deck to rule out, and he still has lots of different ways to be able to build him, which makes him a pretty fun and exciting deck, considering he hasn't seen a whole lot of play since his initial release and some small support that he got in BT6. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.